There's been drama behind the scenes of the film It Ends With Us. Blake Lively, the lead actress, has filed a lawsuit against the director and her co-star, Justin Baldoni. Now, this shocking development has fans and industry insiders buzzing. What happened between these two stars, and what does it reveal about their true personalities? Michelle Dresbold, my co-host, and I are going to look at the signatures of Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni on this episode of Reading People. Let's jump in with Justin Baldoni's signature, which we're going to have up on the screen here as you're watching at home. Let's start with what jumps out about that signature to you.
Now, a few weeks ago, I think we did Trump's signature, and we had something called a phallic symbol, which looks like a male's part. And let's look at his name. Now, I was not that familiar with the story. I've been like in my own world for the last few weeks. And so I pulled out his signature before I knew what the story was. And I looked at his signature. And do you see that great big kind of curved thing up there?
Yes.
Well, what that is a huge phallic symbol. So what that means is, look at me, big hunk of man, ha, ha, ha. So without knowing anything about the story or what their problems were, as soon as you see a signature that has this humongous phallic symbol, whether sometimes it's in a woman's signature, more often it's in a man, it's not just in their signatures. You know, when you see that, the person has unusual sexual habits.
Now, Michelle, are you referring to the line that looks like it connects the first name, Justin, that J, and then that loop that looks like it connects even though there's not much there, a last name?
Right. There you see the J, then you go,
yes.
And then there's this big thing that goes up like that, up. It looks like that. Do you see that?
I do.
That's a phallic symbol. I mean, just look at that. And actually, you could probably take away the J, and just kind of look at that big thing and the few little things next to it and tell me what you see.
Yeah, well, when you isolate that out of context, it looks like a male private area. It looks like it looks like what a
very excited male's private part.
Yes. One that is you could use the word in context or out of context, erect.
Oh, yes, it's quite erect.
It's quite erect.
Mm-hmm,
yes.
Yeah, so I give your viewer out there, or if you're seeing it, just take away the J and see what you see.
One thing that he has been accused of, which is inappropriate sexual texts, sexual harassment, and speaking in a professional environment about things related to sex, which we all know is a no-no in any work environment.
Well, I can tell you this. In life, there's very few things that are guaranteed. I mean, I wish the stock market was guaranteed. But I can guarantee you, when somebody has that big part, that their mind is not, as they say, in the gutter, but it's not. It has very unusual sexual innuendos, and it's a guarantee you're dealing with somebody who's sexually hyperactive.
There's a very angular stroke, which is strong, and it's downward. And we see that in two occasions in his signature. What do you make of that?
I actually think when you see a signature as we see these kind of angles and sharpness, it actually shows someone who's quite bright. So when I see that, even at the top of the J and the connections, someone who digs into things, who understands, who I would imagine this person, whether he's a writer, he may enjoy music, enjoy writing. I would say from that, you're dealing with someone who's intelligent. I mean, he's not like this, like stupid little guy who doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, I would add it's a sign of analytical ability, about extracting data from various sources. And he's a director. Okay. As well as an actor. So it's the ability of taking these different ideas and making something of them in an organized, structured process.
I'm sure he's good at that. That's what that shows.
Now, another thing we sometimes see in celebrity handwriting is the size of the first letter compared to the middle zone, which are the letters in the middle. right?
A middle zone are all the letters that we have upper loops, that's called an upper zone. We have lower, like at the bottom of your J, anything that, or Y, that's lower zone. But all your letters in the middle, your A's, your O's, are called the middle zone.
So, what does it show us about his level of confidence that the first letter is at least 3 times, if not more, the size of those middle zones? And the only letters we can really make out would be possibly the O in the first name. And those other letters, maybe at the end, it looks like Baldoni, maybe a Y. What does it show us that the first letter of his first name is so massively out of proportion to the middle zone letters that we can make out?
Okay, normally when you see handwriting and the very first letter is enormous, you're almost always dealing with someone who likes fame, likes recognition, wants to be known. It can be in actors, actresses, it can be in business people's handwriting, but those are the people who go, I want fame. I want recognition. Look at all CEO, big shots. Their first letters are almost always very big, and someone who's craving it.
Yeah, it's someone I would add who has a big ego.
Sure. Yep. Yep. A big ego.
What else stands out to you that might shed some light? What would the signature or the public facing identity, that sign of nature that he's showing the world, what else would that show us about Justin Baldoni?
Okay. Well, we also have that if you look at the J, it's high and it's low. When you have long lower zones, it also means someone's sexual and or physical. They like sports, they like athletics. This is written very quickly. I mean, he's smart. I would imagine he moves fast. I don't know him at all, but wouldn't be surprised if he could dance or run or has a sport that he really loves. Go look at athletes' handwriting. Almost all their lower loops, meaning their lower G's, Y's, are almost always enormous. Anybody who loves sports. So I would say he's physical.
And would it also signify energy? There's high energy there too.
I think the high energy is the fastness, and it goes off to the end. So he writes fast, he thinks fast, he moves fast. He may not always think everything through because he's moving fast.
So a fast thinker who's highly analytical, sexually
Sexually off the charts.
there is demonstration of a sexually minded person.
For sure. I mean, hubba hubba, yeah, is always on his mind. But those long fastness, action, there's an action in there, and there's the phallic symbol. So you combine the two. So it's not somebody in their little room upstairs or in their basement of their father's house doing stuff. It's somebody who's out there, and it's I would say is pretty blatant. And it may be for a whole lot of different kinds of people too.
And is there anything else?
It goes uphill. It means he's positive, he has energy. He's going to be successful, or at least he wants to be. I'd say he will be. I'll give you one other thing about him. His name ends in a point. Do you see? It's a very jaggedy point. You get in his way, and that's almost like a knife stroke. He's there. He's not going to be gentle with you. It's almost like a knife. Get out of my way.
Yeah, and that's when we were talking about the angularity of the signature. What stood out to me was, yes, analytical strength, but probably some anger.
Well, he's going to put things into action. This is not your sit by the sidelines. In a good way. I mean, in a good way, you want him because he's smart, he's active, he's busy. But in a bad way, he's aggressive, he's overly sexual. So you have those two in balance.
Let's move on to Blake Lively's signature.
Okay.
What I noticed is, first of all, the writing is very circular. You could say more nurturing, supportive in the roundness of them. The writing is mostly in the middle zone. It's almost teenage-like. It's someone who lives in the moment. The T-bar is in the middle. This is someone who's not thinking too far ahead. She's friendly. She's outgoing, although not necessarily extroverted.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to add a few things. It's very round. When you have teenage girls, mostly teenage girls, they'll have this very round handwriting. At that stage as a teenager, you're like, look at me. Hi, am I cute? You're really just thinking for yourself for that day. So it's very similar. I would say a humongous, maybe 80% of teenager, preteen, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls look at their handwriting as all this roundedness. Now, ideally, as you get older, your handwriting matures a little. This handwriting is still very much like a teenager's handwriting, including we have, I think it's an A, which is top. It's slowly written also. It's the opposite of what we saw with Justin. It's slow, which means it's methodical, it's thought out, it's a little bit, I think it's a little, hey, look at me. It's actually big writing and it's rounded. And I find those are like, hi, here I am. Look at me. Look at me.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, emotionally immature. A
Yes.
little bit self-absorbed.
Yes, definitely.
Yet because of the size, bubbly, friendly,
Manipulative.
manipulative. Yeah, well, yeah. And can you expand on that?
A lot of times, and there's different kinds of handwriting that can be manipulative. I find this super rounded handwriting can be so self-centered. So when you're self-centered to get what you want, you're also can be manipulative, and you are thinking of you. Like, am I pretty? Am I this? Oh, I'm having a good day. You're not really thinking of the others around you.
Yeah, self-absorbed, self-centered,
Right.
and what do I need to do that works for me right now?
You got it.
Now let's move into the signature.
Okay.
It's quite large. That first letter is large. This is not a shy person. This is someone who likes to be the center of attention. Do you want to continue?
Yeah, I'll continue. It's loopy. Like, hi, again, it's very feminine. You look at her handwriting, she's very, very feminine, very female oriented. I think the biggest thing in her handwriting is that big X. Do you see an X where the B connects to the next letter? There's an X at the bottom
Yep.
that forms in the B. So when you see X's in signatures or throughout writing, it can mean three different things. I don't know exactly when she wrote this. X's example can mean self-destruction. I'm Xing myself out. You will see X's, unfortunately, in handwriting of people who are hard on themselves, who might, if you keep seeing more progressively in someone's signature, I'd put them on suicide watch. So a lot of X's are bad. X's can also mean, which is on Donald Trump's signature, it also can be, don't mess with me. She has it right in the middle. X, get away from me. So it's right there. That X to me, and everything else is loopy. Like, hi, how am I? Am I pretty? Blah, blah, blah. But that X means she's feeling some self-destruction. And she also is out and saying, you're not going to mess with me. It's tougher than it looks. It's not that sweet little bubbly you want when you have a big X in the middle of your handwriting.
Outward, smiling, bubbly, happy, who cares about their appearance, who is really present with people in the moment. And yet beneath that facade, don't mess around with me,
Right.
or else I'm going to strike back.
Oh, yeah. You don't mess with people with big X's in their handwriting. You don't mess with them. Watch out for if you see X's in people's handwriting. It can mean a few different things depending on how it's done. But when you see it in the middle, it again, you mess with me, you're done.
You mess with me and you're done. Do you see how in this particular example, the writing above is connected to the signature below? They're almost interwoven, especially on the B. They're crowding each other. When I see that, I tend to think this is someone who's got a lot going on, sometimes too many irons in the fire, a confusion of interests, a person who can easily be overwhelmed and be thrown off. What do you think of that?
I think you're right. When you have your lines like two sentences and they're intertwined, think of your line as your mind, when you're writing, and then the next line. So when it gets smushed together, what's happening to your thoughts? Again, handwriting just is a representation of what's going on in your brain. And people don't know what they're doing, but they're putting marks on the page, and we're just reading what the marks mean. So when they coincide and kind of jumble together, and the person isn't giving a proper spacing, they're not spacing out their thoughts well enough. Everything's getting mushed together.
And if we shift to looking at Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni, What is it in their signatures that possibly would have made them work so badly together?
So we have a female who's very feminine, who's very bubbly and cares about the way she looks and the way she's presented and is super kind of sweet on the outside, but has a kind of like don't mess with me side. We have a guy who sexually with you can't. That's just his phallic symbol is so humongous. It's not subtle. He's going to weave that into his life and everything he does. He can't help it. He can't control it. So you have like sort of a sweet, pretty little girl and a kind of over sexual man. And it's going to clash at some point. Now, she might be able to work with lots of different people because, I mean, you're Hollywood. That's how a lot of them are. He, on the other hand, I mean, people might want to work with him because he's so bright. I mean, he's bright. It's nice to work with brilliant people like I'm working with you. And, but when you see that phallic symbol, sooner or later, with almost everything he does, he's going to get himself in some sort of trouble. And, you know, all these people, they think it will be money, it will be other things. It's their sexual desires or weirdnesses that bring them down. And I think he would get in trouble with a lot of different people.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, their communication styles, as we've been talking about, are so different. He would just be overwhelming with not only what he's talking about, the sexual innuendo and the way that he speaks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, though, that it's not going to be just with her.
Yeah.
If you have that phallic symbol, it's going to be multiple problems. It's something to look for in somebody's handwriting. It's almost like somebody who drinks. It will cause them eventual problems. When you have that phallic symbol that humongous, eventually that's going to bring you down. And whoever he's with, I don't care if it's a girl, a boy, a couple, whatever, it's going to bring him down.
Let's do a bullet round of everything we just said. Justin Baldoni, what are 3 things that you see in his handwriting that shed some light on his personality that we might not know?
He has a humongous phallic symbol, which means he's overly sexual. His handwriting is fast, well formed, which means he's extremely bright. And he has these angles in his handwriting, which also mean he figures things out. He may be musical, and he's quite bright in everything he does, except maybe that sexual stuff.
Blake Lively. I'll start. Blake Lively has a bubbly, friendly persona, and yet she's self-absorbed, self-centered, and takes time to process information. What else?
And she has a big X in her handwriting, which means do not mess with me, baby.
And that's Reading People, where we profile the most interesting people in the news.
In the news. Sometimes out of the news.
Yet still fascinating, where we can learn about them and we can learn about ourselves through their handwriting, through their body language, through their statement analysis, so that we can be better by looking at what to do and what not to do.
Right. So if you enjoy this content and want us to do more, please press that subscribe button. Press the button. And if you have comments, comment on it.
And give us a review if you like what you saw.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So it's Jamie Cohen and
Michelle Dresbold.
this is Reading People.